Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first book club. This is episode 2, where we are doing The Wolf Among Us, season 1, episode 2. Welcome to kind of a get together we have, and it's just Joe and I today, and but we are planning on bringing you plenty of discussion about episode 2, and as soon as I figure out how to turn off the sharing, which I should have thought about that. What's this button do? Is that there? Oh, no. Hide from broadcast? No, I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I can just click it. Oh, there you go.
There you are.
Hey,
There's
all right.
guy.
There you go. And how are you doing, Joe?
I'm good, man. I've actually been, I don't know if most people saw the post I put up, but I got back from Mexico, wanted everybody to kind of fill me in on what I missed, and apparently it was a slow news week, but I got more congratulations, so I have to say thank you. I'll be mentioning everybody that said thank you, but I've been just kind of getting back into the swing of work. Funny enough, I was like trying to jump back into Infamous Second Son, and I just didn't want to play it, and I launched up Sleeping Dogs. And for some reason, that thing just got me again. And my wife even looked at it, and she's like, "What are you playing?" But other than that, man, I've been good. It was a nice vacation to have. I call it vacation, but it was kind of our honeymoon too. But it was nice. It was cool to get away. Normally, when we say get away around here, it's up to the mountains, but it was nice to go to a beach. I'm getting used to wearing this thing. I don't know how I feel about it yet. But good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. My question for you is, are you used to yet saying, "This is my wife"?
Actually, it hasn't been as tough for me. I think the hardest thing that my wife Megan has noticed. See, there, got it, nailed it. I've caught myself like once or twice, but I thought it was going to be like every single time. What I've noticed is her. We went to the bank today to kind of switch our accounts over, and she started signing her maiden name. That's weird. Started with a C, and now it's M, McAllister. And she starts with this big old C as she's signing her name. She's, damn it. Not used to that part. I've got it easy. Guys have it really easy when you get married because I don't have to change my name, and I do not envy her one bit. But it actually hasn't been that weird to say wife or anything like that.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, we've been married about 3.5 years, and there are still a couple of days where I just like all of a sudden I'm like, "You're my wife." That's weird. But
Yeah, we have been looking at each other like we're married now.
yeah,
Is anything really that different? And it's not. It's really not. But
no, 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 of course not. There's that second where you're like, "Yeah, this is okay. This is something."
yeah, that was a big step, I guess. What now?
Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing is there's kind of that letdown of like, "Oh, well, that's over. Guess we'll just go back to our lives now."
Yeah, just kind of hang out till we die, I guess.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, no, I'm doing good. I'm glad we can finally get this going because, man, whew, it's been tough. I don't know if it's this has just been such a great series. Just having played the first 2 episodes, I'm actually kind of surprised we don't have more people like trying to jump in here. And we definitely encourage anyone who wants to join us for episode 3 to let us know so we can get you on because I like to have the discussion, and I think it's a great game to do it.
Oh, I can't say enough about how cool this format is and how well this works for what we're doing here. And yeah, anybody that wants to jump on and chat with us about it, we welcome all opinions. And it really helps with something like this. Kind of like if you haven't watched the first episode, please go back and do that. But you can kind of tell how Joey and myself made the same choices while you and Josh made different choices. And it was kind of cool to see how those affected the gameplay and the stories that you guys got. So
Yeah, absolutely. So let's try to get into it. So right off the bat, you're kind of, you're getting questioned by the police after, they found Snow's head. And, I mean, like, to me, it seems like you get off right off the bat. It definitely has a nice transition, at least for me, of getting me back into the flow of being Big B. And did you feel like you had a similar experience, or did you have a tough time transitioning? Because it has been a bit of time for you between when you played episode 1 and episode 2. Did you feel like you had a smooth transition between the two?
Yeah, and actually that was a big concern. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought I was going to get away from who my big B was and how the story was being told. And we talked about this in the first episode, how I was kind of impressing how I thought that character should react to a lot of situations.
Right.
But I think what really helped was the quick little recap, even though it was what maybe 2 minutes or something like that, just showing a couple scenes from the first episode and told me the choices that I had made there. I picked up right where I left off. I mean, my Big B was compassionate but still stern, and not an asshole to everybody, but he was actually pretty fair and balanced. I guess is the best way to use the Fox News slogan. But that's I was surprised that I was able to pick up and just keep going with it and have the same type of character, and didn't feel like, oh man, I need to start over just to get it back to kind of the feeling and where I like it. How about you?
Yeah, yeah, no, I felt exactly the same way. Um, I don't know, like the first scene didn't really have a lot to it, but it was enough where it was like you said, it was kind of like that second of when you're on a train and like the very first thing, the wheels don't really catch on the first go, and then as soon as they catch, you're like, oh, okay, I'm back into it right now. And I think something I forgot to say earlier is there will be plenty of spoilers. So if
Okay.
you have not played the game and plan to play the game, please hold off and watch and wait and watch until after. And then, but of course, while you're right now, go ahead and click the like button now because you're going to like it later. But then come back and watch us later.
Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
Um, I would say also what impressed me right away is I don't want to say I forgot what the game was like, but we talked at some length in the first episode again of the book club here about the feel and the art style, and right away when it's just Big B's face and the blue and red alternating lights of the sirens, I knew right where he was, I knew his mindset, and it really got me right back into the world. And that was just kind of like a I'm home type feeling. You'll have to excuse
Yeah.
me too. There's some kids doing weird stuff like right outside my window. So
No, 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 it's perfectly all right. Actually, you know what I was actually thinking as I'm watching you is I'm like, it's dark here at this point because I'm on the East Coast, and you're not quite, there's still some light coming in, and I'm like, wow, it's really bright there.
yeah, it's that whole concept to me is a little weird. I'm from Iowa, and so calling people back home, like even calling my mom, is always an exercise because I am usually up fairly late. So
Hmm.
I'll call her at like what would be 10 my time, and she's pissed off. Like
Yeah, she's like, I went to bed already. Why are you talking to me?
exactly. She's like, Lee, what do you want?
Yes.
She always answers because I usually don't call, so she'll
Yo.
answer and be like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I love you."
Yeah, yeah. I haven't talked to my mom for a little bit, so I got that message saying, "Are you okay?" Like, yes, mom. I'm 36. I'm okay.
It's always good to know she's still there, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I appreciate it. I love my mother. She's great. And Mother's Day is coming up, so I really, you really have to appreciate her then.
Good call. We should
Uh,
definitely post. Somebody should put a post in first to remind everybody because I almost always forget, or I'll play a card and I'll never send it. I think like
no.
3 or 4 in a drawer because I always call her anyway, and I'm like, "Oh hey, happy
Yeah.
Mother's Day."
Oh,
You
yeah,
call it
yeah,
about 2 hours ago.
yeah. All
Uh,
right.
I can move along.
So
Sorry.
yeah, no, that's all right. That's all right. So after you spend time with the cops, and there's like obviously a spell that's being cast by Ichabod to get you and the evidence out so that they don't indict you for anything. You go and you get to try to persuade, I think it's Tweedledee, to talk. Now, did you find it odd that Bluebeard was there at all? Like all of a sudden, boom, here he is.
Yeah, it was a bit of a I don't know. It felt like he was just kind of shoved in there because he was such a mysterious character in the first episode. He just like
Right.
he was somebody you talked about, somebody that was actually a suspect, and now all of a sudden he just is kind of there. I actually even like wrote in one of my notes like he's just there. I also noticed. Did you notice that it? I'm sorry. Remind me. Did you play The Walking Dead?
No, I only played the first two episodes.
Okay, so I noticed almost instantly that the voice is Lee.
Oh,
And it's hard to shake that. Like I keep he does a great job. It's a different character. You can tell he's doing some a little bit different inflection and things like that. But when Bluebeard speaks, I was like, dang it, I might have just
yeah,
ruined this character for me. But
yeah.
I'll try to kind of get back out of it. But Yeah, I think it's still interesting because he's a very aggressive and kind of abrasive character in that scene with Tweedledee. But yeah, he's just kind of there.
Yeah, it's almost like you kind of have, you know, the character you may want him to be, and there's like it's almost like that entire scene. There's like the good angel and the devil, and they're constantly trying to push you between Ichabod being the good angel and Bluebeard being the devil, pushing you in different directions to do something.
Hmm.
So now, were you able to get Tweedledee to talk?
Yeah, and actually, that scene kind of surprised me because I wasn't rough with him at all.
Yeah,
Not
I
one
did
bit.
end up punching him once or something,
I wanted to.
and then yeah. Well, I just felt like and we'll get to this later when we get to the pudding and pie.
Hmm.
But I felt like they really pushed me to want to commit violence on him, and it kind of comes out later with TJ and Toad. And maybe you didn't get that, but in my playthrough, when you get to TJ and Toad, they were looking at you in the mirror, so they saw you. They saw me commit violence on Tweedledee, even though he was a prisoner.
Ah, see, yeah, that's different because since I didn't commit any violence, it did feel like they were almost saying, "Hey, it's okay if you do it," because there were only two options, if I'm not mistaken, right? And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
it depends on which evidence you pick up, right? The cigar, for
mhm,
instance, you can like burn him with it or like blow
right,
smoke at him or just hand it to him. So each time I just, I gave him the whiskey, I gave him the cigar, I put the money back, and I think that was it. But um, yeah, later on with TJ and Toad, they were totally like nothing happened. There was no recourse because I didn't do anything bad. They were just kind of. I remember Big B, like one of the options was, "Why are you spying?" And that was really it. And Toad was like, "Oh, I was just curious. We've been here forever." And then you just start talking to TJ right away.
right. Yeah, and in my case, he was like, "Well, we saw what you did," and and you're like, "Well, why were you looking in the mirror in the first place?" "Well, we were hoping to catch you on the crapper," and I'm like,
He did say that
eh,
to me too.
"That's
A little
that's a little
different.
weird.
A
That's
little
that's a little
different.
weird." But going back, so you got Tweedledee to talk without committing the violence. Um, so that okay, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Um, so then talking to TJ now I kind of feel like then in that scene they are really pushing you to be the completely different person, and I had a tough time holding my character, you
Hmm.
know, because I felt speaking is talking to a child that immediately my own feelings, like my own self like presence came through then at that point. So I had a very tough time. I actually broke character and end up being like the nicest guy ever because that's just who I am. And talking to a child in that case, it came through right away.
And I think before I forget, there's a really I would have to try and find it and maybe link it either in give it to you for the YouTube when this goes up.
Hmm.
But there's an amazing series that Polygon does called Friends List, and sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not. They're like 5 days a week, and it's just a topic, and the two of
Hmm.
the editors or writers talk. One of them was about episode 3 of the Walking or not Walking Dead, gosh, The Wolf Among Us, and it was specifically titled, and this is why it caught my attention. It said, "Why do we try to impress the characters we're not playing as in games," or something like that.
Hmm.
And that brings up an interesting point because I think my rationale, I was extremely nice too. Like I was a sweetheart to TJ because he's a really cute character anyway,
Yeah.
so it's hard to be a jerk to him. But I also was thinking my Big B has been kind of trying to hint that he wants to impress Snow the entire time,
Hmm.
and that it's clear that there's something there, whether it's reciprocal or not. He has feelings for Snow and doesn't want to piss her off. So therefore, all of my interactions when Snow was right next to me were pretty kind-hearted and had in mind that she doesn't want me to commit violence. She doesn't want me to do anything that's really out of line or too aggressive. So it
Right.
changed the way that my Big B was. And that might just be me rationalizing it, but that was something as I'm playing it, I'm like, oh my god, what am I, like, I'm reading a lot, like pretty deep into this right now.
Well, so that's an interesting question then. So I mean, I think Big B would want to impress Snow. So is it necessarily that we're trying to impress Snow through Big B, or is it that as Big B, we feel the need to, it's been communicated to us, how he feels, that there is something there, like you said, whether it's reciprocal or not, whatever. But as playing as Bigby, I want to impress Snow because that's what's been communicated to me. Not because Brian wants to impress Snow, because I know that Bigby wants to impress Snow.
Yeah, it's almost like the like Ross and Rachel thing. You never know like if those two are gonna end up together, but you really kind of want it to happen. I'm gonna use like the some people may
Yeah,
that are on first may not even get a Friends reference, but
yeah, yeah, I
my
know.
wife will probably really appreciate that one. Uh, she loves that show. Um, but I think it's one thing where I personally want to see that relationship develop, but I also think that the way the story goes, it should. Not to mention, you lost that character in the first episode. And I think one of the greatest lines in this whole episode was Big B says something along the lines of, I already lost you once. And Snow says, I wasn't yours to lose.
Right.
Oh, man, that is solid.
Yeah.
That's good writing. But it's interesting because I want to play as Big B. And I think like it jumps into psychology so much because these writers are making me think like this character would think, and making me think like this character would think about how the other characters are thinking and how they're
Hmm.
perceiving the character. And it's kind of when you reflect on it a lot, it almost gets like draining. You're like, oh God, how am I going to play the next chapter? Because I know things are going to really accelerate here soon. And especially with the way the chapter ends, you're like, wow, come on.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's one thing. I mean, both the first chapter and the second chapter, they really drop the hammer on you. And then, I mean, right away, I'm like, wow, I really kind of want to plow forward, but at the same time, I kind of want to sit and let this soak in.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think it's the way to do it. I think I don't know if I'll show you real quick. I don't know if you can even make it out. This is my note sheet. It looks like a crazy person,
Whoa.
but that's just like I'm
Nice.
just making little observations, and like that's how much I've gotten into this game and the storytelling to the point where I'm almost an investigator in my own right, just writing down like what I think is important. And I
Hmm.
wrote down some questions I wanted to ask you as well, like
Oh,
kind of
good,
about your
good.
experience. Um,
Yeah.
but here, I'll just fire one at you now. One thing I thought was interesting was the fact that Crane walks in and everything is kind of okay at the police precinct, that is, at the beginning.
Hmm.
So there's, people hear a ringing and it's a memory wipe spell. And then as it goes through, you find out that the body is, of course, not Snow. And
Right.
I forget her name, Lily?
Yes.
It's
Oh, shoot.
It's the owner of the bar's sister.
Right, 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 right. I
There's
think I think Lily's right, or it's very close.
okay, so there's glamour put onto that character. And what I actually thought, and I didn't dwell on it too much, but what my initial thought was a fear, I'll say, is do you think that down the road or in episode 4 or 5, they could just as easily go back to something that was in episode 2 and say, well, there was a spell? Could they
Oh,
go back
okay.
and use spells as kind of a cheap trick to be like, well, no, that actually didn't happen, or that wasn't really that character?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, they could certainly kind of retcon it a little bit if they really needed to. So I think that that's there, but I don't know. I mean, I guess just looking at how The Walking Dead. I mean, even if I've only played two episodes of looking how that progressed and how this is progressing, I feel like, and maybe this is my own, being naive, I guess maybe, but like I feel like they're being honest with us, and that would be kind of a dirty trick. So I guess I'm optimistic that they are going to be honest with us as writers and us as players in order to have a genuine story, and to overly use that would be disingenuous, and I feel like it could kind of like be cheating. So I feel like there's already an unwritten agreement between the game and myself that they're not going to do that unless it's a part of the story.
Right,
Um,
and I think they're
but
smarter than that. I
yeah.
think they are because I think they know that piss a lot of people off. If
Oh yeah.
they were dead the whole time or it was a dream, would really not piss people off.
Oh, oh, it was a dream.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was all in the imagination of a 6-year-old boy.
yes.
Um, yeah, that's just interesting to me because I also think my first thought when Snow came back was that,
Hmm.
well, wait a minute, if a troll can put on glamour to look just like Snow, technically nobody is safe. None of the characters that we now believe in are safe.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know.
no, I mean it definitely has a Skrulls feel to it, you know?
Hmm.
Like any minute now, like you're gonna be like, oh, hey, that person's a Skrull, and that person's a Skrull. We gotta get into a fight now because I don't know who's who, and I don't know who to trust.
Yep.
So definitely feel that, and so that's kind of like I mean, that was like the first thing. Like when Snow walked in, that was I was sort of elated and uh, like just jaw dropping moment because I still had like in that moment with Tweedledee, like before she walks in, like I still had this heavy heart. Not me, not.
Hmm.
I felt like Bigby still had a bit of a heavy heart regarding Snow, and that sort of drove some of my decisions. And then for her to walk in and it's just like the bottom drop right out from under you.
Yeah, and I do think one, I thought that was an awesome opening scene. It felt very ready for television or film. Like I thought
Hmm.
I thought it was a little bit slow, but it was just enough pacing to where they cut into the credits. It's like, all right, that was well played.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think when she walked in, it changed a few things for me. It was still like, at first I might have thought it was maybe a cheap or dirty trick to be like, there's a spell, she's fine. Never mind, it wasn't her. That's what it would
Yeah.
have been. She's fine, it wasn't her. Um, but I also kind of thought that they handled it well in the following scene. I can't remember if it was in a cab or just another scene where they were walking, but it was just Big B and Snow. And one of the choices, the one that I chose, was just him saying, "I'm glad you're not dead." And the
Yeah.
way that they instituted like just pauses and the way the voice was carried through, that line sticks out to me because he kind of hesitates, was just didn't know really how to say it, but it
Hmm.
was able to move the plot along to where she was like, "Yeah, I'm glad I'm not dead too. All right, let's talk about
Right.
who we
Right.
intended."
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really like writing, and I'm not purposely jumping way ahead, but is so you have this feeling that oh, Snow's not dead. This is a great thing, and then you have to go talk to Holly, and you're like, okay, I'm happy that the person I care about is still with us, but let's face it, this is still a serious situation. We still need to figure out who did this, and we have to push forward. So it's not like we can just be happy with what we have. We have to now help other people. You
Yeah.
know.
And it's tough because you're going into a place where you destroyed their bar. You fought one of
Right.
these other characters, and you have to tread lightly there. Um, but yeah, it kind of, I mean, they really play with a lot of emotion and a lot of real world kind of stuff, which I appreciate. I mean, it's not like when you say video game, it's not. I don't want to jump into the argument of is it a game or not, but I think it's a little bit more serious than a game because they are playing with things like I talked about. I mentioned psychology, but it's psychology and just relating to people and your emotions and situations you have to approach. Like I said, I kind of put myself in the shoes of Big B. Like, how would this character, being a hard ass but being fair enough, walk into something where he got into a huge fight with these people, could have ripped one of their arms off.
Yeah, or in Josh's case, did rip someone's arm
Did
off.
because he's a heartless bastard, and I can say it because he's not here. Uh, and I have no fear. He's going to be in the comments on YouTube. Uh, but it's just interesting that this series, I think that's what maybe has me really invested in the series so much and gets me looking forward to like Tales from the Borderlands and especially Game of Thrones. I am terrified for how that series is going to turn out.
Yes, that's
Like
going to
in a
be.
good way, in the best terrified way possible. I'm excited to see what they do there, but I think that one holds a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, I'm just very curious how. I think they have a lot of opportunities there because you literally could be playing different people the entire time. Like, people die so often that, I mean, in reality, you really could be playing somebody one episode, and playing from a completely different point of view in a different episode. I think that could be really great. I mean, that could even, say in episode one you play as, um, um, gosh, I'm totally blanking out. I was gonna say Sean Bean. That's not right. That was the actor.
Well,
But
and that's interesting though because you could go. There's so much before where like the television series is now that's explained
right.
so well. They could easily go prequel, but then the format of the games themselves, they could go way back to when Sean Bean and the King,
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
were
Robert
fighting.
Baratheon. Yeah.
Yeah, when they were fighting together, when they were younger, and Robert was actually, a big, strong, in shape dude. But then you could also jump way beyond to where the books aren't even going to
Yeah.
touch because Telltale can write clearly a great story.
Sure.
They can get something that George R. Martin says, yeah, this is great, write it, and it's 30 years down the road from where the stories are taking place now. So
Right.
I think maybe at the end of Wolf Among Us, when we get past episode 5, we should talk about what we want to see in the episode 2, and then maybe what we want to see from Telltale in the future too. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm definitely up for, I was thinking that, in the future after we do this, and we can always play a different game. Like, I don't know, did you already play Last of Us?
No, and I am absolutely pumped that I'm one of those suckers that just could not wait for this PS4 edition to come. I am so
Yeah.
excited.
I started out as, I'm not going to pay for that, blah blah blah, but I can actually feel myself moving away from that
Yeah.
stance because I'll probably end up buying it.
And I've heard nothing but great things. I mean, I've heard, well, nothing but great things. That's really
There,
it. I mean, I don't think I've heard any criticism that's like, it's a terrible game. There's no reason to buy it. Besides the fact that there's always that argument, like same thing with the rumor of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 coming out for next gen.
sure.
Like I would personally buy those again to see them running beautifully on a next gen system, but I haven't heard anything that says Last of Us is not worth playing. So
Right. Oh,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that maybe that would be something that we could play
Yeah, definitely. We
do
could try
next.
it. And I'm not familiar with how the game is laid out. Is it kind of broken out into like chapters or levels so we could like get to a certain point and stop?
I have no idea, but
Yeah,
that is an excellent question.
out.
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So getting back to our story. So you talk to TJ and find out that there's obviously something sinister happening. For how they got rid of the body. So you go to look at the body, and am I the only person who stopped at like the witching well and was like looking at it like, obviously they put this here for a reason. I'm very curious to see how this plays out, how this object plays out in the future.
Well, I actually did you go talk to TJ first or did you go to the body first?
Oh, I went to TJ first.
I went to the body first.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and I don't know if it plays into anything differently, but I actually like it was a straight path for me, and I may have just missed it, but I had to walk straight to the body.
Oh, I actually like I just stopped and looked at the well. I had the
Oh,
opportunity to just stop and I looked at it and I just kind of looked at it for a second because I was like, they wouldn't have put this here for no reason.
yeah, they don't
So
put that little icon on things for nothing,
right,
typically. I mean,
yeah.
unless there's a
So
thought.
I'm very curious to
So
see how that's going to play out.
did it just like have him look at it, or did he
Yeah,
say
yeah.
anything?
You just could look at it, but I would, like, of course, there's this part of me that like wants to like take a shoe and drop it in there and see what happens. But, um, sorry, we just watched Thor 2 again, or I bought the DVD Blu-ray, and
Yeah.
so they always drop shoes, and there's just a ton of shoes wherever they go in the Dark World. So anyway, wait, this is just the most tangential podcast ever.
We're taking some hard laughs, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Uh,
yeah. So
well, it's the same
okay.
thing
So
like that damn genie lamp. I rub it every time. Nothing happens, but I rub it every time I'm in that
oh
business
yeah,
office.
and I bet you they put it in there specifically because they know that every single person, every time you walk by, I rub it.
Yeah, and
But you never know.
it's probably one of those things where like it will only work in episode 4 or 5 at like one particular scene when you're in the business office. If you rub it, like the genie will come out and be like, "Would you just stop?" And then go
Yeah.
back in and he's done. Like that. That's how I'd write it at least.
That's fantastic. I now I want that to happen.
And now you'll be disappointed if he's actually like a
Yeah.
pivotal character.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at the well. I went straight to the body, and just noticed things like the track marks, and clearly it's not snow. I was actually pretty surprised that again, I mentioned this in the first episode that we did of this, but I was really surprised at how comic book slash cartoony the art style is, but it still really gets across facial emotions, and
Hmm.
how like I got that Snow was visibly disturbed by essentially performing an autopsy on her own body. Like that's weird,
Yeah.
and her questions like with I had to ask about the lingerie once the jacket was open, because a
Hmm.
little part of Lily Lily's underwear or whatever while she was in the glamour was showing, and
Right.
he had to ask her, and it was clearly an awkward interaction, but she was disturbed that not only he had to ask, but that like the whole thing was really weird, and you get that vibe as you're playing through it. So uh, all props to Telltale. I mean, for as not gorgeous as the game may be, and that might be even being a little bit too harsh on it.
Hmm.
Uh, it does get across a lot of things that are kind of just like subtext that you may not even notice, but you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think, and you kind of mentioned earlier, but the pacing, like the pacing of the actual dialogue, really emphasizes, the feelings that they are trying to get across, the emotions, because, there's the part where you want to open up the jacket, but you're at the same time you're respecting, the fact that Snow is standing there looking at her own, like what looks like her body. So you kind of have this. Um, there's the awkwardness and it's palpable, and I think that I mean, we do gush quite a bit about the writing, but they just did such a fantastic job with, like I said, with the pacing and the dialogue, especially in that scene. And you can feel, and it almost feels like, even though Ichabod is around, he doesn't even feel like a part of the scene because that is so insular between the interactions between Bigby and Snow
Mm-hmm.
and the
And while I'm
body.
thinking, yeah, exactly. And while I'm thinking of it, what did you think of Ichabod barring the final scene? What did you think of Ichabod in this episode? Personally, I thought it was a stark contrast to the first episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, um, there was definitely he was this. I think to me that they wanted it to feel this way. They wanted it to feel like, he's way out here, and now all of a sudden he's, like where you wanted to keep your distance from him, and then he's just butting in the whole time. And it's almost like I'm like, okay, I really wish you would just go away. And I was getting annoyed with him, and that just made the end for me all the more, real. Where I was just like, oh, yeah, I'm coming after you.
Yeah, and you have to wonder too because I think there were at least two times while you were interacting with Crane, and he said I have business to tend to, but he was very ambiguous about what he was going to do. He basically was just like, hey, I gotta go, and you had no idea what was going on, where he was going to be, and then at the final, you see the final scene, and you're like, what was he doing that whole time? And
Yeah.
you have to know. And like you said,
Yes.
I wanted to fire up episode 3 right away, but I held back. Don't worry.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I did the same. Um, so you go to the body, and then it's off to the Pudding and Pie Club. And so what was kind of like, you go in, you talk to the guy, and if I thought it would be, you know, a normal scene, but to me, mine dragged out a long time because I was being very patient.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like the entire scene, at least to me, it felt the entire scene was just about testing your patience?
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely was. Are you speaking of like when you get the cricket paddle, for instance?
Yeah, like and the fact that they move you around the entire, and like find every single piece that would obviously be important to him. And I feel terrible. I can't think of the guy's name, but
Georgie.
Georgie. You're right, Georgie. And it was like every time you specifically walk to something that was important to him, and you had the opportunity to break it,
Hmm.
to do damage, and it, I'm like, okay, no, I'm gonna hold restraint. And then it was the next thing. Okay, I'm gonna be restrained. I'm gonna be restrained. And finally, when I got to the DJ thing, I even I snapped. I was like, I can't do it anymore. Poof, it's all going over.
I was just gonna ask if you held back the entire time, but I actually ended up I wanted to just like I did with Tweedledee, I wanted to hold back the whole time, but I got to uh the TV. I broke the TV because I was just like, this is like a third or fourth thing. Like the scene seems kind of. I was like, I wonder what's gonna happen if I break his TV. And my reasoning, as funny as it might sound, I was like, strip clubs don't need TVs. Nobody's watching a TV. So I just broke it, and he kind of was like pissed about it. But then we just moved on, and then he ended up finding the safe anyway. And I was like, well, I probably didn't even need to break that. Um, it just kind of was a dick move. And
Hmm.
now it's like I know I could have got through that scene without busting anything. I don't know if it's gonna really affect too much. It seems like a pretty inconsequential decision, but dang it, I was doing so
Yeah.
good.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I got past the TV, so I did the
You did
TV.
even
There,
better.
yeah, I think there was one. I think there was one more thing after the TV before the entire DJ stand.
The keg. Yeah,
Um,
I remember.
and and I'm just like, okay, that was when I think that was like the sixth thing, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done. And I'm just wondering if I had just been restrained for one more thing, would there have been one more thing, or would that have been it? Like, I mean, they clearly had an idea, at least in my mind, they had a clear idea that they wanted to push your buttons
Hmm.
as much as humanly possible,
And it
or
may come into play in the next
willfully
episode.
possible.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come into play because there's always been kind of hinted at that Bigby has a temper. In the
Hmm.
first episode, when you're fighting the woodsman, for instance, your eyes start to turn yellow, but he holds back. And then in the preview for the next episode, you're like full on Wolfman.
Yeah.
And I think it's Frog or Toad that says, Bigby, is that you? Are you in there? And the wolf turns around. It's just straight up lick and throw. Like he's just
Yeah.
staring at the camera. And I wonder if it's not going to play into that. I kind of hope it would. It'd be cool to see, like, even if it's like you broke one TV, you're obviously hiding, you're obviously pissed about something. Or,
Right.
yeah, I think the next one's just going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely looking forward to it. So, after you get, the information, you go and talk. Um, Finding out that the person you go when you walk into the person who was dancing when you walked in was the Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Wow! Like my brain just went.
Yeah,
Like I was
that
like,
messed with me a little
uh,
bit. It was,
yeah, that's how I felt. I was just like, she's like, I was a Little Mermaid. I'm like, I feel dirty now,
right?
and,
Yeah, it was just like innocent
and now I feel
spoiled. There
dirty.
goes everything.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for me. And once again, my lips are sealed. Comes back.
Yeah,
There
like
is
I actually,
obviously something going on with that.
yeah, and you could tell it was strained. Like she was trying to tell you something. It's got.
Yes.
I'm like nearing 100% certainty that it's a spell because he had asked something and she said these lips are, and then hard pause, and then
Yeah.
moved on. And I don't recall if she began speaking again or if Bigby did, but you could tell she wanted to say something and she physically couldn't say it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, literally and literally couldn't say it.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, it just. I mean, they did kind of hit us over the head with it really hard this time, but I mean, it's definitely going to have to come to a head. We're going to find out the big bad who comes out from all this. If it's Bluebeard, or although it does seem way overly obvious that it would be him as the bad guy, um, but somewhere along the way, there's going to have to be a big bad, and they are going to be in control of this spell.
Sorry, I was wondering if I was still on. Um,
Oh, no problem.
yeah, and it's tough because Bluebeard is such a jerk in the episode. And in the preview, it shows him behind Crane's desk. Again, full disclosure, spoilers, but it shows him behind Crane's desk, and he says there's going to be some changes around here, which I can't imagine bodes well for Snow and Bigby and the way that things are going to operate. But it would almost be shocking if he was actually the bad. It's like
Yeah,
they might even be building him up to make you think like there's no way, and then they're gonna just slap it on you like there's gonna be something that comes back to him or something. And
right.
again, all credit due to the writers. I know we've talked about them constantly, but man, they've done a really good job of giving you just enough to be like, what the hell's going on? I've got to see this whole episode or this whole series through, or this season, I think they call them. And it just makes you want more and more. And I know there was a pretty big community uproar when it took a long time between episode 1 and 2, right? And then 2 and 3
Yes, I think
started
so.
over.
Yeah, and then I think they're now on the schedule where it's like one month it's Walking Dead, the next month it's Wolf Among Us, the next, like every other month now.
Cool.
At least that's how I understand it. If you, the viewer, know, put something in the comments or let us know in the app, and we'll correct ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I want to make sure the voice actors get credit because, like we were talking, the Little Mermaid when she said these lips are sealed. I got that she couldn't say more.
Right.
I got that that there's a lot of emotion behind a lot of what they're saying. It's not. I always use Skyrim because I love Skyrim, or Elder Scrolls in general. I should just say Bethesda games. Fallout is guilty of it as well, where they have 4 or 5 phenomenal voice actors, and then
Right.
the other guys, like,
The B team.
yeah, and they're just very dry, very monotone, and you don't get the emotion out
Yeah.
of their speech.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes in Bethesda, it's almost like they hired someone great for the for the first male, and someone great for the second male, and someone decent for the third male, and someone decent for the fourth male, and then they're like, okay, we really don't have enough money, so whoever the fifth person is, they have to do voices 5 through 10.
Yeah, and they just like change inflection or try and
Yeah.
make their voice deeper a little bit, or
Yeah.
it always sounds a little funny to me. But like Elder Scrolls Online is a good example. They've got some like big names out there. Like John Cleese is in it, and I recognized him immediately. But then
Right.
you, like run into a random character in a town, and it's just like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, hi, buddy, and the next guy you walk past goes, hi, buddy.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
oh, okay. It's
The guards in Skyrim all say the same thing, which is kind of fun. But
Yeah.
I don't see that with The Walking Dead. I don't see it with The Wolf Among Us. I don't, and now it's like if it were to show up in Tales from the Borderlands or Game of Thrones, I'd be pretty pissed because they're now known for stellar writing and to me great voice acting that can deliver that writing in a way that does make you think more than just like reading a subtitle, or even if you were just reading a book, you get what they're going for, you get their direction and their angle without them really even trying.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say that. Not without trying. They're clearly trying.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're clearly working at it to make it a solid experience, but you can tell that Telltale puts emphasis on the art direction as well as the voice direction.
Yeah, maybe not trying too hard, I guess. They're not making it like overt to where it's like, God, these guys are really like they're pushing too hard now. So
Right. No, I understood what you mean.
When you were in the business office, did you inspect the tarot cards?
Yeah, it was shoot. Did I get the 10 of? Is it the 10 of swords or is it the 6 of cups? I don't remember what I got now.
I got 3 of swords, the moon, and the hermit, and I wrote them down because I can't believe that there's not some significance. I'm probably just gonna be like show up as an idiot later when they're like, yeah, they were just cards on a desk. But I think that they have to have some sort of significance. They wouldn't be. I don't think they'd program in where you can walk over, pick them up, and he says 3 of swords. I think he just like, looks at, puts down. The moon. He says something about deception, and the hermit. He said something along the lines of, "I hope you find what you're looking for."
That's interesting because I think I only flipped the first one, and he just said something. I think he just said something, nonchalant about it and dropped the card, and I didn't think to keep flipping cards. I think I just moved on.
Well, and I noticed that in this episode, so maybe keep an eye on it. And those that have not played, well, I guess if you haven't played, you shouldn't be watching this yet. But if you have played and you decide to either go back or continue playing other Telltale games, I've noticed in this episode in particular, they had a couple of instances where the little selection thing stayed in that same area, and you could keep looking at things. When I was inspecting the body, I think it did it as well. But I can't remember. But I know the tarot cards, it was like the same spot. I was like, why would that still be there? And I'm kind of one of those guys that finds it's funny if they say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
At the exact same time, like the cassette player in the room that you're inspecting. He doesn't say it. He says something the first time, but then if you inspect it again, he just like, the camera just kind of pans up and over it. And so I inspect it again, it pans up and over it again. So it's like, okay. I guess it's there.
Yeah. Well, they do need to, just from the way that we've been, that you and I come from a era of gaming by continuously clicking on it, like it may eventually, StarCraft, for example, you keep clicking on the same guy and eventually, they start saying ridiculous things. And, we're the type of people who grew up in these eras where that was something you did. You walked along the wall pressing the button the entire time because you went along every single wall because you never know where a trap door was because they didn't have visual clues for you like they do now.
Oh, yeah.
You just had to walk along and click the button. And just keep clicking the button.
And it's so funny because that used to be compelling gameplay. He used to keep me in a game, and now we just have DLC.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that we don't have quite as much time as we used to.
That's true. Getting old sucks.
Yeah, be responsible. I saw something on Facebook today. Becoming an adult was the worst decision I ever made.
Right? If I could just go back.
Yeah, seriously. Just Christmas break. You're off for 2 weeks. You don't do anything. Like,
Yeah.
why did we give that up?
That was the best. Um, let's see.
So anyway, you move from the club. You figure out that you need to go to the hotel. Hotel. We'll
Yeah.
use some air quotes. And you find that Beauty's working there.
Yeah.
So it isn't what you thought, but yet it's still kind of sleazy.
It is, and I think it's interesting the way that conversation kind of pans out, because she still wants to keep it from Beast, but it's for semi-noble reasons. Like
Yeah.
she doesn't want to hurt his pride, um, and you can tell he's a very prideful character. So that was interesting, and the whole conversation, like, hey, I know you have to file a police report, but can you just kind of not mention me at all during
Right.
that thing? Was interesting, and the fact that he shows up is then like, oh shit.
Yes. So you get into the fight with Beast. Now, how did you feel? And this is something I wrote down for you. Is comparing this fight, the fight with Beast, with the fight that you had with the Woodsman in the first episode? Like, I mean, I had a completely different feel to it. Now, what were your feelings? Because it's really kind of that and the fight in the bar at the end of the first episode are really the big set pieces for fighting. So how did you feel like this one was? Did you feel like this was different from the other fights that you had in the previous episode?
I felt it was. I still feel like the combat's a little wonky because I know I missed one. It was kind of funny because I got slammed in the chest with a pipe, but I kind of giggled at it. I was like, damn it. But it was different because I think there was more behind it. Like there was more emotion. You could tell that he was clearly just enraged and wasn't willing to listen to what you were saying or what his wife was saying. And that might have just put a little bit more kind of gravitas behind it. So I kind of knew there was more at stake. But I also know that the option to hit him again or not hit him, to me was very important because I wasn't doing anything wrong, or Bigby wasn't doing anything wrong, and Beauty wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just a misunderstanding. It was kind of, I don't know. To me, when you stop, I don't know if did you continue to hit him?
Yeah, I did. I didn't really mean to. No, the thing is I didn't necessarily mean to, but it was like one of those things. Like I wasn't sure if I don't hit him, is this going to continue to escalate, or do I just kind of and not put him down, but put an end to the situation? Boom, this is it.
Yeah.
So I thought that perhaps there would be more to it, so I went with I'm going to stop this right now, and then it was like, you chose to not stop, and I'm like, oh, that's not really what I meant to do, but, well, that's, and I thought about, maybe I'll go back, but then I'm like, well, why? I mean, like, this is the choice I made, and, now I'm living with it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, but I want to touch back on that, so you may have to remind me, but, yeah, I stopped, and it was a pretty stark stop to the fight. It was weird because I didn't hit him, and then all of a sudden Beast got up and he was cool. He was like, all right, and he just kind of I told him to go down the hall, make sure nobody comes out, and Beauty was like, just do what he says, and he just kind of walks away, and he has this kind of look of understanding, and I've started to look into the facial. As I said earlier, the facial to me conveys a lot in the story, so you could kind of tell he got it, but to me it was like he's pissed, he's cool, all right. And it may, I think that may have just been accidental or an oversight, or I may even just be reading into it too much or missed a small snippet of, be it emotion or, eye contact that was supposed to be heavy that they understood together. They got it. But it just seemed like it ended and it was just over and everybody was cool. I'm going to check out this room now. I don't know if since you decided to beat the living hell out of him, I don't know if that was different for you.
Well, and that's the thing is continuing was one more punch. So I punched him one more time. Like, that was it. And I'm just like, okay, well, now he won't get up again, because I was thinking if I didn't punch him, then he'd get back up, and we have to continue fighting. And I don't really love the fighting mechanics that much to want to continue to keep fighting, so I just decided, let's just end it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but pretty much the exact same thing. Like, he was bloodied and he was obviously upset, and then he just did what I told him to do. Yeah, I felt like there might have been something missing in there, or they just kind of wanted to get that beat over with so they can move on to the actual to the room.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say like I actually would have been fine with not having any combat in that episode. I'd have been totally
Yeah.
okay with that. I know it probably wouldn't have been reviewed well, or wouldn't have been received as well, but I would have been fine with it because I don't think it was necessary. I think it probably could have been diffused through, just talking or maybe like one or two quick time events. But to me, it was, and I don't want to say it's like unnecessary, but you could have taken it out. And I would have been I probably
Yeah.
still, charged on with the story and just understood it. And again, I don't want to say that it was just tacked on or that it felt like anything was missing because I really don't think anything was done poorly, but it was just kind of
No.
almost out of place or weird just to be like,
Yeah.
all right, dust yourself off, go down the hall, hang out with bloody eyes. I don't know if your fight scene
Yeah.
had, yeah, okay, that was weird.
Yeah. It was. I mean, I understand why it was in there, and I think it was an integral, touch base for how your interaction with Beauty in the first episode. So I understand why it was in there. It just, like I said, it just felt a little off at the time. And then to go into the room after that, and it goes from this high intensity moment to you have to be completely calm and investigate everything.
Yeah, and
Uh,
and I don't know how you felt about Beauty being in the room. To me, it was just a little. I mean, she did add some value to the scene in terms of like input. Like she did mention a couple things that finally made me change my opinion. But initially, I was like, why the hell is she in here if I'm the sheriff and I'm investigating a murder scene? And she's already kind of said she doesn't know a ton. She doesn't remember Mr. Smith. She doesn't remember. She sees so many people. She couldn't even remember Lily's name because there are so many that come in and out all night. Um,
right.
to me, it was just kind of like she wasn't supposed to be there. And then I don't recall what at the end she said something um, that was, integral to figuring, putting two and two together, and then kind of gotcha. I think it kind of was to serve as Snow because she wasn't there.
Right.
It felt like she was asking questions that she really probably wouldn't have asked as that character at the
Yeah.
time, at least. I don't know how you felt about her being in there.
Well, yeah, now that you mention it, like at the time, it didn't. Now that I'm thinking about, like what I was actually thinking at the time, and now I'm realizing that I think that I expected her to be there because Snow has always been there. Um, so now that you mention it, yes, you're right. There was no reason for her to be in that room, except for the fact that you need that, like, you're so used to having that sounding board
Yeah, like a call
that
and
Snow has
reply.
been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like it may have been, I mean, he isn't really the type that would be sitting there talking to himself during the thing. So maybe she is, I mean, it's entirely possible that they went with, and they do this in movies and TV as well, just the best way to explain what's going on is to have that back and forth rather than, because it's not like you can have thought bubbles, you know,
Right.
um, like you can have in a comic or a manga.
Hmm.
So, and then this is the only time that I felt like the mechanics let me down. Is I had trouble getting out of the room. Like I talked to Beauty. I investigated every single thing in the room, and for some reason, I don't know if I just wasn't in the right spot or whatever. I couldn't trigger moving on.
Hmm.
It was yeah. It's the only time where I've had a confusing point where I was like, what am I missing something? Because I found everything and I've talked to Beauty and I just don't know how to leave.
Weird. Yeah.
You didn't have anything similar
No,
to that?
mine was pretty seamless, and I'm actually trying to remember like the exact progression. It's easy for me because I just played it not too long, like an hour ago. But I can't even like. I must not have had any problems because I don't remember anything going wrong. It just kind of was like the natural investigation, and then all of a sudden it was like, Crane, you bastard.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean and that's like ultimately, and maybe this is what Telltale wanted is you had this high intensity moment, you had this very slow, deliberate pace, and then all of a sudden it's like my temper went right back up again. I was like, Crane, it's almost like a con moment, like
Yeah.
Crane.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you wonder what's going to happen because if I'm not mistaken, the last scene you see is Crane watching you in the mirror and then breaking the mirror,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah,
have to assume that Crane is going to skip town because he
yes,
either, and it's obviously I can't tell the future, but he probably knows that Bigby thinks he's guilty, whether he is or isn't. That's weird. That whole
right,
thing
yeah, yeah.
of him laying with, yeah, that's just
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no part of that investigative of that scene that doesn't lead to creepy old dude. Like there's no other paths. There's only one path. Creepy old guy. Like
exactly. And I
doing
wasn't
this
even
thing
that
that's
weirded out at first because like I was like, okay, well I shouldn't say I wasn't that weirded out, but it was like starting to come together like, okay, somebody's a weirdo. Like they want to reenact this fable, like the
right.
thing. And then when you find out it's Crane, it's like that just takes it to a whole nother level.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, because you've been in the business office, so you know that Crane's desk is, in spot A, and roughly say 6 to 8 feet behind him is Snow's desk, and that's where it really starts to, become real. Where you're like, this is a person who sits 8 feet away from her, and then he does this other thing, and that's not right,
Yeah,
you know.
he dresses her up. He buys the exact same perfume and
Yeah.
puts use this on it. And I didn't think of this until now, but in the first episode, and I think it's mentioned in this episode as well. But Snow's main motivation for helping Bigby out so much is that she's always kept in that office.
Hmm.
That it sounds like Crane was like, you're not leaving. You have stuff to do here. Basically, he always wanted her right there with him. So now it's all starting to kind of click, and it's like, wow, he really did have some weird stuff, and it makes sense for him to skip town because I don't think there's a good way for him to be like, listen, here's the deal, here's what was
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean and that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. I mean, that is an excellent point. I didn't even think about that from the first episode where she talks about that. That even makes it weirder.
Right?
It's almost like you expect her to be like, and then someone's been going through my underwear drawer. You're
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
So one thing I wrote a note of, I don't know if you remember this choice when you were talking to Holly, you were breaking her the news of her
Okay.
sister. Um, there's an option to give her the body or promise her the body.
Hmm.
Um,
I did.
do you recall what you promised her the body?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Because I felt like we weren't going to get any more information out of the body. We had all the leads that we could get from it.
Right.
So the right thing to do is to especially when you think back. I was thinking of how the people who are like Holly, where their requests fall through the cracks because they don't live at Greenland, no Green shoot
Woodland,
whatever.
right? Woodland. It's
Woodland?
you
Yes,
guys get
Woodland.
it.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what we.
yeah. So you don't live at Woodland Terrace or whatever it's called, and so they fall through the cracks. And it was my opportunity for me to be as a civil servant to say, okay, we're going to do right by you this time. So yeah, I promised the body. You?
Yeah, and I think it made sense too. I did as well because I played that one pretty close to the chest as well. I played that like again because I was with Snow. I think that influenced. So I was like, I kind of want to make sure she knows that I'm not going to be aggressive and not going to just punch Jack in the face right away,
Yeah.
which was an interesting character. We all know he'll be back, and I'm not excited
Oh,
for it. He's just a
yeah.
jerk. Um, but Holly also mentions that their custom for their people is to burn them by sundown or something like that. She's like, or something happens, but we need the body basically. So she
Hmm.
told me so, and same reasoning as you. It's like I'm not going to be able to investigate anything else. I was initially thinking, well, Crane's going to be pissed, but then I remembered I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
Crane's an
Well,
ass.
and that it's funny you mentioned that because that's what when I watched the preview for episode 3 and Bluebeard's like there's gonna be some changes around here and I'm like I give a shit. I'm
Yeah,
gonna do what I'm gonna do.
be the same old Bigby.
Yeah, it's exactly like I'm like you go ahead and make those changes. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go do what I usually do anyway.
So, and I'm sorry, we're kind of jumping back into the story, but at the end, there's the preview of next week or next week.
Next week, yes, next
I
week's
guess we could do
episode.
it next week. If we wanted
Sure.
to, then we're gonna have to wait another month for another episode.
Yeah.
There was, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think it ends with you as full-on wolf, right?
Yeah.
But there's also
Mhm.
Bluebeard sitting at the desk mentioning there's going to be some changes, and I don't actually recall kind of because it goes pretty quick. I don't recall
Mhm.
what else was there, honestly.
Yeah, I don't really either. I just some of it is I'm kind of just like I'm watching it because I want to know what happens, but I would like to be thrown into it also. So I'm okay with not knowing because I want to experience it firsthand.
And we already know we're going to play it, so it's not like we're
Yeah.
going to miss anything.
Right.
But I
Exactly.
think those are probably the two biggest heads up moments. Like clearly things are going to escalate. I have a buddy that played it, and I said, please don't spoil anything. He's like, just be prepared. It's not as action oriented as the first episode, but he's like the story gets real. Like it's going to escalate pretty quick. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean,
So
hard not to.
uh, before we wrap up, so one of the questions I'd like to ask you, Joe, is um, did you feel like this episode went by quicker or like to me it felt short even though I know it wasn't necessarily short. It just felt like it went by very quickly, and I don't know if it was like how I was playing it or the pacing of the entire episode, but I feel like I spent a long time playing the first episode and this episode went by like really fast.
It did. It definitely felt shorter to me, even though I still felt like I was taking my time investigating everything possible. I mean, there were times where I was walking back and forth to make sure there weren't any little dots I was missing.
Right.
But it's still, well, I can give you a perfect example. I think I started playing at 4:15-ish. I took a couple breaks and I was done by what 6:20 my time.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and I know I took a couple breaks. I talked with the wife, so I had seen some things that this episode was short, and it actually got some kind of harsh criticism for that. These these types of things are hard for me to justify saying that like, oh, it's too short. Like if it was 30 minutes, I'd be pissed. Um, but at I'll call it an hour and 45 minutes. I still feel like I got a lot out of it. It
Yeah.
pushed the story along and the plot along nicely. I feel like the characters are actually developing really well. Um, but it's hard not to notice that it was shorter.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel much the same way. I don't feel ripped off or anything. I just, it was just like, oh, and that was wow, that was quick. I don't know. I'm like that was just like wow. It was I started and then it was over.
Yeah,
Um
and it
so
probably
yeah.
doesn't it probably doesn't help that idea that we want to jump right into episode 3 because it's like that's it. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Press start. Next one.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So do you have any final thoughts or any more questions or whatever you want to share with our audience?
Um, I mean, I'm really excited. I think I like the direction the story's going in, especially because at the end of the first episode, you think it's going one way, and now at the end of the second episode, totally different direction. Totally different suspects, totally different idea of what might happen. And I think that's what keeps me coming back to it. So, I mean, if anybody from Telltale ever watches any of these, keep up the good work. Damn you. This is awesome. I expect great things. And in the community, I mean, if you guys have watched this, uh, if you guys have questions or you guys have observations, I would say definitely throw it into the first topic for the first book club topic. And obviously join us next week. But other than that, I mean, I'm really not next week. Excuse me. I keep saying that.
No, that's
I
fine.
think
You're
episodes. I
fine.
think TV. I think next week. See you next week.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But next time, I will definitely try to make sure my schedule is completely clear, so we don't have to cancel or postpone or anything like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one, and I'll throw it over to you, man. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to getting into the next episode because, like you said, the feeling that I had at the end of the first episode, I really got to stop hitting the desk because
I just
it's
saw it.
making everything shake. But I'm trying to make a point. And of course, I go doink right on the desk. But No, I mean, like you had this feeling, this downbeat at the end of the first episode. I mean, there was no denying it. Like just seeing Snow's head there, that was a lot to take in. And this is a completely different feeling for being the end of the episode. Now this is not, it's a completely different emotion. I mean, this is now like not fury, but like anger, because this person was supposed to be helping you, and now they're it's like when you see like your neighbor on To Catch a Predator, and you're like, oh wow, that's messed up.
Yeah.
And now we have to do something about it, and so you have added Google
Yeah, don't
effects.
worry. Don't worry. I was gonna try and play this perfectly, but I gotta see here. Here we go.
Okay.
The first episode ended on one of these.
Nice.
Let's see, where's the other one? There's another awesome one. Yeah, that's how the second episode goes.
But yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to the next one, and I'm thinking maybe 2 weeks we'll do this one. So, folks, if you have thoughts, comments, suggestions, whatever, put them into the first app. I'll put up a thread for us to talk about it, and then I know we had a couple people who said, "Hey, let me know when you guys are going to do episode 3," and they're going to jump in. So, and if you'd like to join us, let us know so that we have more conversation going on in this. So I think that would be really great. I think we saw some really great choices last episode, and having more people can't hurt. So let us know if you want to be a part of it. And it's just a Google Hangout, so it's not like you don't need anything special. If you don't feel like having a camera, we'll understand. We'll make fun of you a little bit, but we'll understand, and we'll see if we can get everyone back together for episode 3 in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, so I think that's going to end it up for Book Club episode 2, and we will catch you next time. See ya.
See ya.